Pursuant to Article 49 of the House Rules, the Speaker of the House has appointed this Select Investigative Committee, giving us the remit to investigate a complaint filed by Representative Leah Howell. This is the first meeting of this Select Committee. Its purpose is organizational and to generally review the rules and procedures that we will follow. We will not be discussing the substance of the complaint at this meeting. The investigation will likely touch on matters that stir very strongly held, even passionately held opinions and feelings. Our committee will work hard to focus on the facts relevant to our inquiry. If there are any disruptions or breach of decorum during these proceedings, I will act swiftly to stop it, and anyone involved will be escorted from the hearing room. I'm now going to ask Gordon Self from the Revisor's Office to review with us the rules that govern our investigation. As those in the legislature and those who are otherwise involved in the legislative process know, the revisors are a group of top-notch attorneys who help us draft legislation and advise us on proper procedures to follow in our committees. Mr. Self is head of that office and will serve as our committee's legal counsel. He has considerable experience with select investigative committees, having served as legal advisor to several other investigative committees over the past several years. I ask that you draw near and give your attention to Mr. Self for a review of the rules and precedents that will guide our procedure. Thank you, Mr. Self. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Gordon Self. As indicated, I'm the reviser of statutes. The Constitution of the State of Kansas provides in Article 2, Section 8, quote, each house shall provide for the expulsion or censure of members in appropriate circumstances. That responsibility with regard to its members is the responsibility of the House and only the House of Representatives. The House has provided for expulsion or censure procedure of its members in its rules, House Rules 4901 through 4903, Article 49. First of all, the rules indicate that House members may lodge a complaint against any other member of the House requesting that that member be reprimanded, censured, or expelled for any misconduct. The process that's laid out in the House rules start with the filing of a written statement of such complaint with the chief clerk, and that has been done in this case, and then the chief clerk forwards or sends the materials to the Speaker. The rules then indicate that once a complaint has been filed and the Speaker receives it, the Speaker shall, that's mandatory, shall appoint a select committee of 6 members comprised equally of majority and minority party members for consideration of the complaint. And that has been done, and that's why we're here today, or why you're here today. The rules further go on and indicate that the Select Committee may dismiss the complaint after inquiry or set the matter for hearing. Reasonable notice and an opportunity to appear shall be afforded to the member complained of at any hearing. Upon completion of the hearing, if there is a hearing, and deliberations, the committee may dismiss the complaint or make recommendations to the full House for reprimand, censure, or expulsion. To a great extent, that is the specificity of the procedure that the Select Committee follows that is set out in the rules. From that point on, it's the discretion of the chairperson and the members of the committee with regard how they will proceed with regard to procedural matters that are not specified in the House rules. And I stand for any questions.
Committee, are there any questions for Mr. Self? To what extent, I have a question, to what extent do the Mason rules pertain, if at all?
It's my opinion that as the Constitution sets out very broadly that the House has this responsibility, and when you reach a question that isn't specified in Article 49, I believe it's up to the chairperson and the body as to the application of Masons. And I would also add custom precedent, is up to this body as to determine how much to involve that in your proceedings and deliberations.
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee? Representative Francis.
So you don't feel like the fact that I believe Mason's manual is part of our rules, along with those other things, affects that interpretation on your part?
Quite often, I'm going to answer it this way, and once again, this is up to this select committee. In the past, select committees, some have relied heavily on Masons and applied Masons in both their consideration and their deliberation and in their reasoning. And on the other hand, there have been select committees that have followed their own procedures more and not relied on Masons or even specific House rules. They've applied their own, they've set their own guidelines and procedures, and they've followed in that manner. And I would not question this select committee on which route you chose. I think it would be up to you.
Yes, Representative Amix, if you have a question for Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Self.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Self, let me make sure I understood this right. The Constitution does not prohibit us from using Masons, correct?
It does not.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, seeing no further questions, thank you, Mr. Self. Appreciate your advice and counsel. Committee, as Mr. Self has indicated, the written rules pertaining to our investigation are rather sparse, and I think it's fair to say draw on both legislative and judicial proceedings rules. Generally speaking, I intend to proceed under the rules and customs applicable to our standing legislative committees, as those are the most familiar to our committee members and to the parties. However, as our purpose is not to consider legislation, but to investigate a complaint about a representative's behavior, we may from time to time apply rules and procedures more judicial than legislative in nature. Having said that, I believe that our guiding principle should always be to ensure that both parties have a fair opportunity to fully present their side of the matter, for the committee to ask any relevant questions, and that we avoid letting the proceedings drift into irrelevant matters which cloud our consideration of the specific issues presented to us. I'm now going to ask that the two parties submit to me via email by 5 p.m. tomorrow, that's Friday, a list of witnesses from whom they wish the committee to take or hear. I also ask for them to submit copies of any documents as well as a description of any tangible items that they wish to have admitted into evidence. Once the information is received, the committee will decide when we will next meet and the agenda for that meeting. Also indicate that I've asked our committee assistant to place several copies of the complaint on the desk on the back after the meeting so that anybody interested will have those. Representative Carr, did you have a question?
Yes. One item that
Why don't you come up to the podium?
Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. One item that I need a copy of is at home. It's in Wichita, and there would be absolutely no way I could have it here by 5 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine. If you could, just, when you send me your list, just describe it. And then when you get home, and hopefully early next week, Monday, would you be able to get that to me?
Oh, yeah, when I come back, I could. And a secondary question. I understand that this is a different proceeding than the first proceeding that I was involved in. However, there are quite a few more documents in this proceeding, and so up front, I would like to ask for additional time. There are 46 or 48 documents that I saw in this proceeding in the complaint against me, and I would need more time than what.
To respond, you mean?
Yes, to respond, but I can have the email by 5 tomorrow. However, the information that I stated is that in Wichita, I can't. But with respect to the proceedings moving forward, the 5-minute time frame that we had previously seems a bit constricted to answer to 46 or 48 or whatever it was, particular pages of information.
Right, and each of these proceedings is unique, as you're pointing out, and it's not necessarily the case that everything that we did last time will apply to this one, for the reasons you point out, that it could be a more involved process, and 5 minutes is likely not to be sufficient. I understand that.
All right, thank you. And one other question with respect to the allegations that were presented.
I prefer that you not discuss any of the allegations substantively.
I'm not.
Procedural issues are.
Yeah, just procedural. With respect to procedure, based on the nature of the allegations, it's going to be difficult to not use certain language based on the nature of the allegations. So I just, I don't know where the, how that's going to work with respect to the leniency when there are certain words that are part of the allegation that they're going to have to be used.
Well, we'll just have to navigate that as it comes. I can't offer prejudgments on it.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you very much.
Representative Ballard.
Yes, I have a question, and may I ask Representative part of this question?
If it's a procedural nature, yes, you may.
It is, thank you. He indicated that since this procedure is different, so would you explain in terms of how is it different? An example I'm giving was last time we had the investigative meeting. That's what we're having now.
Correct.
And then we asked for the gathering of submission of materials and witnesses, and you asked that. But do you mean that procedure differently, or this is different than the other? Right now, it seems like when I look at, we're following the procedure we have followed.
Yeah, the actual point of procedure is exactly the same with respect to, first of all, I have until tomorrow when there were 2 days in the previous procedure. I would also state that there's a lot more information in this particular procedure. So, I would say that 5 o'clock time frame is quite crunched with respect to what the previous procedure was. And then to speak to your point more directly, I was referring to the 5-minute explanatory time frame that I do not believe could possibly encompass the amount of testimony that would be required to answer to 44 or 48 individual pages of complaint.
Thank you very much. I wanted that clarification. If we're following the same procedure, with the exception of how we're asking for things, that's fine. But I wanted to make sure we're okay with the procedure is basically the same.
Yeah, the procedure seems to me to be exactly the same.
Thank you very much for clarification.
Thank you.
Right, so I think Representative Ford raises a good point that I'm very aware of, that Each of these proceedings is unique and different, and the way we proceed will necessarily take that into account. We're not going to be straitjacketed by the 5-minute rule that we had before. We're not going to be straitjacketed by anything. To the extent that these proceedings demand something else, we will adapt. Any further questions? Yes, Representative Osman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So in the last special and select committee, to which we were all committee members, the filed complaint had a specific mention of a chapter and section within Masons to which a violation had occurred. And that helped us to determine what the arguments would be, how it would be framed, and where our deliberation would come from. To my knowledge, the complaint itself does not mention either a statute within Masons or the House rules. How are we to determine where the violation has occurred?
I think that's a matter that will be taken up in our next meeting. Representative Amix?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just so we understand the procedure, because of the depth of, all of the materials that we have and just everything that I think will be involved in this complaint,
Yeah.
Do we have to have this done before sine die?
I'll check and see if Mr. Revisor has an opinion on that.
No.
Okay.
It's up for this body to determine, the process and the time and when meetings are set. The select committee, although this one is specified in Article 49, in general, select committees are, when appointed by the speaker, the chairperson or the speaker may call a meeting. So if a meeting is not called by the speaker or the chairperson, in this case, most likely, you do not need to proceed in a time frame.
If I could, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I see that Representative Howe, the complainant, has a question, so please approach.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize to everyone. I need to get back to my Health and Human Services. They're waiting for me on a vote, and I perhaps naively thought this was going to be a little more brief. Do you all need me to stay here, and I can let my chair know that I cannot come back? Or could I be excused, perhaps?
You can be excused. We're virtually at the end of the meeting, and I would suggest that perhaps you look at WebEx to make sure that you didn't miss anything in the meantime.
Absolutely. That is not a problem. Thank you.
Chairman.
Yes, Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we go back to my question, the only reason that I bring that up is I look at our calendar, and it looks like it's jam-packed, and trying to make sure that we do everything thoroughly. I just want to make sure that we're not constrained by a drop-dead time, so, okay.
Yeah, it's good that we clarified that. Apparently, we aren't. I mean,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
having said that, I don't think we should in any way delay. We need to move with due deliberation and speed as best we can, but like you said, we need to do a good job and not a fast job. Yes, Representative Carr.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. As I just received the complaint packet literally minutes ago that was delivered to me, I had received some documentation earlier, but since I hadn't gotten it from the committee, I didn't know that whether or not it was complete. And to follow up on what my colleague, Representative Amix, had said, I was assuming that there were some additional documents in what was sent in the envelope. I'm yet to open that envelope, but In my defense, if I'm not sure what the crime is that I'm being accused of, if I don't know the rule, then how would I defend myself pursuant to a rule that no one has specified to me? So if
Are you saying you haven't received the complaint?
I received the complaint,
Okay,
but
then I think that's the end of it. You've received the complaint.
but the particular rule, I mean, if I'm going by what we used at the last proceedings, there was some definite, solid deliberation on what the specific rule was that was being violated. So I'm just,
That is an issue that we will be taking up in the next session. Then that goes.
but how can I defend?
Excuse me. That's the substance of the complaint, and we're not discussing that today.
Okay, so will the next meeting, I'm basing it on what happened before. Because before we had another meeting, and I had produced all of that information, and we just moved forward. If I don't have it now, then how can I prepare?
You have the complaint.
I have the complaint,
Right.
and I can answer the complaint, but I wouldn't be able to move forward past that because I don't know what the exact rules violation against me is in
Understand?
the Masons.
That will be discussed in the next meeting.
Okay, so then there will be a subsequent meeting after that that will allow me time to put up an adequate defense based on those complaints.
I'm not going to prejudge this. I don't know what else I can say.
Well, but I don't know what else I can do. If you won't tell me the crime of which I'm being charged, then how am I to offer up a reasonable defense? I mean, this is, you said that this was going to be part, like legal proceedings, as in a courtroom, and that it would be a portion of what takes place on the House floor. And I'm just saying that anytime something like this takes place, there is a specific charge, if you will, that someone has to build a defense for. And
I'm not sure if I can say this any more clearly. These issues will be taken up at the next meeting.
okay, and I'm going to assume that I've got time to prepare after that next meeting. That would only be fair. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee? If not, the meeting is adjourned.